Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight on this Wednesday edition of Wave Extra here in the Wave Now studio. Jose Sosaya, I'm here to walk you through, of course, the biggest stories of the day. None perhaps bigger than just the awful, heartbreaking tragedy up in Minneapolis in Minnesota as we're starting tonight. Kind of with the focus that we've been able to get as far as details are concerned. I will let you know we're going to have much more time to get into the latest updates that we're able to provide, being far away, of course, from Louisville, but relying on the reporting that we're able to gather from those outlets up in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. But just knowing also that the heartbreak is extended to our community as well at this point, confirming what happened inside of that Annunciation Church. 2 children ages 8 and 10 killed, 17 more people hurt. The shooter ultimately who took their own life fired into the church while morning mass was going on. And to that end, the Archdiocese of Louisville reacting as we reached out to the tragedy that happened in Minneapolis. I want to read you the statement from Archbishop Shelton Favre. Just as a reference point, and the Archbishop writes, quote, saddened by the senseless act of violence, he invites the faithful of the Archdiocese of Louisville to join him in praying for the repose of the souls of those killed, the victims who were injured, and the Annunciation community. Let us continue to pray for peace in our communities. So just seeing the outpouring of support coming there from Catholic community leaders here in the Archdiocese of Louisville. And as I mentioned before, as you're just joining us here on whether that's the Wave Now stream on your smart TVs or whether that is through our multiple social media channels, just a story that we're certainly going to break down the latest details as we're able to have them and perhaps any of those other connection points coming up on Wave News at 11 tonight. But for right now, we're going to also touch on some other stories happening closer to our community in our own backyard. One of them being a family and a community still looking for justice right now because a driver struck and killed a 41-year-old man before that driver just drove away early Sunday morning out in Jeffersonville. And we're now hearing tonight from the victim's family. In fact, this will be something you're going to hear a much more in-depth conversation from our Wave News reporter, Julia Richardson. But I want to just show these images for you. So the man who was killed that day has now been named. His name was Samuel Carlisle. Friends and family tell us when they heard the news, it was devastating. They still feel like they're in a fog ever since this hit and run happened. Those loved ones add to us that Carlisle was well known in the Jeffersonville community, offering to help people fix things, cracking jokes, making people smile to those who knew him much better. But now they're simply begging for the community for any information about who might have taken Sam Carlisle's life.
To hit someone and go off and leave them and don't call and get help for him, to just let him lay there and die. That's a cold-hearted person. Whoever done this, I would like for them to come forward and give him justice so he can rest in peace.
And that was from Carlisle's aunt, Helen Tabor. We're going to hear much more from his family tonight on Wave News at 11, as I mentioned with our Julia Richardson. Jeffersonville police at last check this evening telling us they'd have ID'd the car and a person of interest that they're looking for, but they are not disclosing any more information about this just yet. But once we do have that information, we'll make sure to let you all know, of course, through the wave3.com homepage on our website, as well as all of our different methods, our app, and our streaming connections for you to check in on that. More new development nights tonight. We're staying on the Indiana side of updates and headlines, in particular when it comes to the Indiana Attorney General's case surrounding professional misconduct, or the prosecutorial misconduct there. And we'll pull some video up here. It's a panel overseeing Todd Rakita's case. Well, they've denied his request for the disciplinary commission to turn over records about him and the motives for the investigation. Rakita's defense argues that the comments he made back in November of 23 were protected by his own First Amendment rights. But this all follows comments he made a year before that about an Indianapolis OBGYN who provided abortion care to a 10-year-old patient from Ohio. That prompted an investigation which the Indiana Supreme Court decided Rakita did violate Indiana's professional code of conduct. The full hearing on the case is still set for December 18th. Public records show taxpayers have actually already spent nearly $500,000 on Rakita's legal defense. And moving on to a story, and adds to sort of our broader coverage on just the scope of infrastructure investment and changes that are going to happen for you drivers who maneuver and go around all the different interstates here in the Louisville Metro. This one, we're talking about a pretty big detour and the timeline for when this is going to happen. So we've now learned I-65 in Louisville is going to be closed next year for 2 whole months to accommodate some bridges that leaders say need to be replaced. In fact, one of Louisville's busiest interstates, it's going to be shut down for several weeks next summer. So today, this is part of what our Wave News reporter David Mattingly spent digging into to find a bit more of those specific details. He finds, 125,000 motorists a day who use the stretch of I-65 are going to have to find another route to get where they need to go. We're specifically talking about 3 60-year-old bridges that you'll see soon are showing their age, and they don't need to be just repaired anymore. They need to be fully replaced.
By the numbers, the project is $150 million, replacing 3 interstate bridges that carry 125,000 motorists a day. And from the looks of things, it is overdue.
Everything will be replaced. We'll have new piers built, we'll have a new deck built, new pavement on top.
But in the meantime, that drive into downtown will be a challenge. Next year, I-65 will be closed from Jefferson Street to the Watterson for the months of June and July.
2 months is actually a very short time for a major project like this. You're talking about major bridges in a very sort of confined corridor. It's narrow, so it's really about safety and timing of the project.
When it's done, new bridges will be standing in 3 locations, all of them ground-up reconstructions. And at 25,000 cars a day, the total for a 2-month closure comes to 7.6 million detours. Kenneth Clay's DoorDash job will feel the pinch.
It's going to kind of mess everything up in the sense of everybody got to restructure their schedule and make just traffic crazy and hectic. So I can just say it's going to be chaos. I can say that.
And Tristan Thornberry's commute from Germantown will have to stick to surface streets.
I can't even imagine for people that live further out, like towards like Fern Creek, Mount Washington area, that have to commute, especially downtown, just to get to work.
Our thanks to our David Mattingly for that report and that perspective from some folks who were clearly expressing how this is going to affect their daily routine, to say the least. Again, project managers are emphasizing, though, this 2-month closure is going to be the quickest, least disruptive way to get the job done at the scale that it will need all this attention. Work is going to go on down below, though, from now until June. Leaders here say that's going to have minimal impact on traffic until the time comes to fully shut down for those 2 months that stretch of I-65. We have much more news coming up in this hour, as we call it, as you're joining us on Wave Extra. So as you stick around, we're going to discuss justice for a little girl who was hurt in a road rage shooting, discussing a program that's happening for potential future aviators and pilots. And I'm going to also spend some time in the evening breaking down some of the big takeaways from a new report from the Office of Inspector General for Louisville Metro when it comes to helping Louisville Metro Police not only hire more detectives, but also potentially keep them, and so they can fulfill that specific job role that they do within the department. So lots to discuss and break down. So hopefully you stick around as we take a quick break and be right back with much more on Wave Extra. Just starting 8:16 tonight on this Wednesday, August 27th in the Wave Now studio. Appreciate you joining us for this latest edition of Wave Extra. Many more stories to discuss. This is now a follow-up to a 2023 road rage shooting, I should say. It left a young girl paralyzed, but we now know a suspect that police were able to identify and arrest was in court today. And want to show you some of that video that we've been able to find because we've learned Shelby Biskiner faces wanton endangerment charges earlier this month. Another suspect, Jonathan Rivera, pled guilty to 5 counts of wanton endangerment after he was accused of firing several rounds at an SUV back then. We learned, of course, in the immediate aftermath that little 6-year-old Onyx Sands and her family were inside of that car. Biskiner was supposed to have a bond hearing today, but that was pushed back after she changed her lawyer yesterday. So you saw an image there, you're seeing an image there of little Onyx and her mother, and her mother says is frustrated about having to wait longer to get justice.
We want to get this over with. We want to move on with our life. We want to see these people punished for the things that we did. We don't want to have to worry about getting off work or getting out of school to go to court to testify.
Biskiner's bond hearing is now set for next Tuesday, September 2nd. By the way, to hear much more of our conversation in full with Onyx and her family, you could check out our Fernando Garcia Franciscini's full report that is up on wave3.com. More stories for you tonight. We know a shooting that happened last night near Central High School led to a temporary lockdown, and there was even a shelter-in-place order. It happened, as we know also now, there was a boys' soccer match going on between Manual and Brown schools. Both of those teams happening, and of course try to find cover when this happened. We were able to check in and ask a question of JCPS Superintendent Dr. Brian Yearwood. He talked about the incident at an event today very briefly, and here's some of what he had to say.
This community violence, we have to take more action. And this has to be a combined action between us, the city, and I'm speaking with the mayor who is in full support of certain things, but we have to do more to ensure that our community remains safe.
And some details perhaps on the shooting and where things stand on police investigation side. The shooting happened on Congress Street around 8 o'clock last night. Police say it was a man that was found shot in the knee around that location. He was taken to the hospital to be treated. LMPD saying they apparently did detain, quote, a few juveniles, so minors, teens there, they believe ran from the shooting after it happened, but apparently no arrests were made. That is the latest we do have from LMPD as far as this happening near that soccer game. More updates. We now also know a second juvenile is facing charges in a deadly Newburgh shooting that happened earlier this year. This is video that we took immediately after the crime happened. This happened on June 23rd back around the 5300 block of Ridgecrest Avenue back in Newburgh. A teen boy died at the scene before he could even make it to the hospital. Metro Police say they have now arrested a 16-year-old. This is the new arrest, and charged them with murder complicity. We know another teen was arrested last week, charged with murder and possession of handgun by a minor. And now, in more stories, as we're kind of going over different parts of the Louisville Metro and our community, we want to shine a light on a brand new program that's going to put high school students up in the sky. Shawnee students, in fact. This is part of an aviation magnet program. These students spending their days at school, not necessarily in their conventional classrooms, but in a hangar out at Bowman Field. So Wave News anchor Brian Schlonsky spent some of his day today meeting these future pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers before presumably their professional careers take flight.
It's the middle of the school day, but these high schoolers are far from a traditional classroom. They're at Bowman Field, learning to fix planes, learning the aviation industry, learning to fly.
When I seen the aviation program, I wanted to take the opportunity and be a part of it to show kids like me that they can reach their goals just like how I am right now.
Cameron Sloss is driven, plays football, runs track, and is now one of 19 juniors and seniors from Shawnee who spend all day, every school day, here.
And you use power to maintain your altitude, and you want to pitch to get your airspeed where you want it to be.
Getting direct exposure to flight operations, not just reading about them in a textbook.
Being in this environment is just a great opportunity, and it makes me feel like I'm at home, like I have a second home.
The program is the first of its kind in JCPS. The students take flight lessons in the air, attend an FAA ground school, and have a certified teacher in the hangar to teach them their core classes as well.
In an industry that cannot have enough pilots, where the jobs cannot be filled, let's think of the possibilities that we're about to launch into here.
The program's goal is to make Shawnee the leading aerospace program in the state of Kentucky. Sloss's personal goal is to fly for UPS someday, learning where the action is, taking his dreams to the skies.
Flying every day, training, so we can achieve our pilot's license.
Thanks to Brian for having that conversations with hopefully some future pros, making all this happen for us in the community and fulfilling their own personal dreams. Flight Club 502 is partnering with the school at Shawnee to make all this possible. They're going to make sure that now that they'll have access to planes and flight simulations and those programs, that the next step is to actually add a drone program to allow for those certifications for the students who want to pursue that. So we're going to take a quick break here on Wave Extra. After this pause, I'm going to break down some of the big takeaways from a quite lengthy memo that we just got a copy of today from the Inspector General in Louisville Metro. And this is discussing one specific set of sworn officers within LMPD and the things that the Inspector General, after doing some of these interviews with detectives and sergeants, think is A, what is keeping them from doing the job to the best of their abilities, and B, also what some of those solutions are going to be. So we're going to discuss that as we take a quick pause right now and be right back with much more of tonight's Wave Extra. Just hitting the clock here on 8:25 for your Wednesday, August 27th. Here we are in the Wave Now studio. Appreciate you joining us for tonight's edition of Wave Extra to unpack and unwind the big stories of the day. Looking forward, of course, to tonight, should anything else be updated, and sharing that new information with you on Wave News at 11 with the entire team we do have working. And also appreciate everyone who joins us on the stream, where you're commenting on our channels like Facebook, X, Twitch, YouTube, for example, like There we have a couple comments, Justin and Ann. Just appreciate the interaction and the ability to join us and spend some time kind of going through those big stories and updates. Any given day, we're here to discuss that. Speaking of which, today it's a pretty lengthy document outlining how the Office of Inspector General for Louisville Metro says there's a lot of challenges that LMPD division detectives in particular have to overcome. And in a response we're able to get today from the chief, Paul Humphrey, saying that, of course, they're trying to review as many of the initial specific points as they can. But for the most part, he agrees with the takeaways, and particularly so with trying to ease the caseload that detectives have to deal with. One solution to that is going to be by hiring more detectives, but that would speak to the broader goal the department has to hire more people who want to come work for them and do this work in the name of public safety. The IG's office, though, saying that the ball is now in both really LMPD command and Metro Leaders Court to find those practicable solutions. But Ed Harness and his staff telling us in their observation and summation of what this memo entails. They interviewed 36 detectives and sergeants. Their insights then drove Harness to make some of these key observations, write them, that he believes are going to help LMPD keep and promote these talented detectives. So what are some of those? And we'll start with the first of the big takeaways, as discussed, was Metro OIG writing that the existing process to hire detectives right now is relying more on interviews and perhaps a performance in those conversations as opposed to written tests, or in the memo, as the office puts it, other kinds of standards that could be measured as a metric as opposed to what an interview would yield. To that end, the office writes the current minimum patrol experience for LMPD detectives in this capacity for division detectives is too low if it sits at 3 years compared to the recommendations made that any of these detectives have 5 to 7 years of patrol experience. And in the instance, as it seems the Inspector General was alluding to in having done these interviews, should a retired detective want to come back, be rehired, the current policy would instead have to make them work another 3 years off patrol instead of potentially exercising the experience they would have already accumulated over a career. Another big point in these interviews and surveys they had with detectives talking to the OIG, that they feel they're lagging behind on the newest training, especially when it comes to forensics, court testimony, interviewing and interrogating techniques and practices to that effect. And a factor that is not alleviating this feeling that they're being left behind is that there's no structured mentoring program for these newer detectives. Moving further on down the list as I have it here, and by the way, you can read the full memo. It is up on our homepage of wave3.com. It's extensive. If you want to read the full 115-page document, it is there for you to skim through and read item by item. But just know you can find the big takeaways toward the top of the document at around page 4 and 5. But moving on. Third, detectives say that unfortunately, on the low end, they feel like they're having to handle at a bare minimum 500 cases a year, but on the high end, it could be as many as over 1,000 cases a year. The word triage came up pretty much in nearly all sets of interviews that the IG staff had with these detectives and sergeants. Triage in the sense that officers admit they have to prioritize felonies and violent crime investigations, but that often leaves having misdemeanors not fully investigated as best as they can or should be. And on top of that, there are evidence backlogs that will further delay their tasks. There's administrative work that also does take up some significant time, but that's all contingent on the current level of staffing that LMPD says it has right now. Further down in the OIG memo, the big takeaways discussing that there are yearly performance reviews for detectives, but these the template as it stands is not really factoring in the kind of detective work these employees are doing, and the fact that there's simply detectives as the promotion and rank structure is set up. They might dream of getting promoted to be a sergeant or move on to a special unit. That in turn compromises the existing pool of division-level detectives that can be spread out through the different patrol divisions for LMPD. And later on in the IG's assessment, LMPD detectives say that there's no formal career ladder for someone who wants to sort of apply those detective skills in particular and sort of stay in that track, in that job responsibility. And perhaps a conversation, that happens in most industries when it comes to the pay that is expected and then given for a specific role. But the OIG finding that when it comes to detectives' pay at LMPD, that the compensation as it is, as Harness writes, does not reflect what the role out in the real world is demanding of them. So certainly a lot to digest. In fact, tonight on Wave News at 11, we'll break down some of those key short, mid, long-term solutions that this report is laying out. It's not as an order. It's more of a suggestive prescription, as the OIG, as I was reading the memo and describing it. It's a diagnosis on their part that could serve as a prescription based on the recommendations, but it's not like the department is being compelled to do this. It is up to them to discern what they can do, what they should discuss with city leaders, and take those policies and make those changes internally from there. So certainly a lot to discuss there. But we're going to break that down tonight on Wave News at 11. So switching gears over to sports, and for Cardinals fans in particular, it's been nearly 8 years since the NCAA forced the university to remove their 2013 championship banner from inside the KFC Yum Center. But now it looks like U of L is going to make that push to have this particular banner returned to the rafters to hang up for the games and for anything happening inside of the venue. Our Wave News sports reporter, sports director, Kendrick Haskins, was the one breaking down some of these details. And so here's how he was describing as far as his reporting is involved. But just some background that U of L forced to vacate that 2013 national championship back in 2017. This was an NCAA order after investigation revealed there were impermissible benefits given to recruits. Because of those allegations, the Cards, they had to vacate the national title, the Final Four run in 2012, and 123 wins accrued as a program from the years 2010 to 2014. Since then, though, Luke Hancock's Most Outstanding Player award, that has been reinstated. U of L acknowledged the 10-year anniversary of the title in 2013, and following the NCAA Michigan ruling, which did not require the Wolverines to forfeit their football title recently, even though they were found guilty of multiple infractions. It seems U of L leadership wants to have a conversation right now with the NCAA. What I'm going to read you is part of Athletic Director Josh Hurd's statement that was put out today, and this is just a snippet in part. So I'll read as full as I can here from my screen. But it begins with saying, "We know how much that special season and national titles still mean to our former players, fans, and the Louisville community. With significant changes in intercollegiate athletics, new guidelines and principles regarding sanctions, and recent rulings in NCAA enforcement cases," and this is the part you're seeing on your screen, "now is the time, the appropriate time, to revisit Louisville's sanctions with the NCAA, including the prohibition on displaying a championship banner. We look forward to engaging with current NCAA leadership in hopes of seeing a fair and meaningful resolution." Again, this is still very early. It's in the nascent stages of the process. There's no date set for a conversation with A.D. Hurd, with school leadership, and the NCAA. Should that and when that happens, we'll make sure to let you know. But something that obviously U of L athletics would like to be able to accomplish, to have that banner, that recognition of the program's success back in 2013. Well, moving on to a story I wanted to share with you tonight. This is coming from our Wave News anchor Dawn G in her Make Ends Meet series. The phrase buy now, pay later might sound good, but what's not good is the payment plan that can then bring a lot of specific disadvantages. So Dawn spent some time talking to a financial planner and investment advisor who does want to help people make ends meet without causing any trouble, though, to people's and clients' credit history. As it stands, if you have a smartphone, you might know there's a prevalence of these buy now, pay later apps popping up and options on just about anything you might want to buy online. They are fast, they are easy, flexible, and they are ever changing. And it could work for you or it could work against you. The advisors say what you do with it depends on your approach and your discipline.
It is a modern-day layaway, a name from times past.
So it just gave you the opportunity to purchase something now and then pay for it down the line.
You pay for the purchase over time, but in this updated version, the retailer doesn't lay the item away. You get it immediately, even if they don't get all the money right away.
It's just basically a credit card in a new outfit. The key is that it was not going to be reported on your credit.
The short-term loans were easy, unmonitored, and a click of a button away.
Well, a lot of people started to use it because it didn't show up on your credit report. It was just a way to get credit under the table.
Now, FICO, the leading provider of creditworthiness or credit scores, has big changes coming this fall for those buying now and paying later.
And the regulator stepped in and they said, no, we want to now start reporting it on your credit report, FICO, things of that nature.
According to a 2025 Motley Fool study, 15% of Americans have used Buy Now, Pay Later. With the modification comes good news.
If you use Buy Now, Pay Later and you pay your bills and you pay it off, that's going to be a good mark on your credit report.
And bad news.
Now with things appearing on people's credit reports, now if they pay late, that's going to appear. If they default, that's going to appear. So there are some downsides.
Your credit report is record of your financial history, including credit accounts, payment history, and any other information about your credit journey. The information is crucial for lenders as they decide your level of credit risk. In other words, will you pay them back, and will you pay them back on time?
And anytime you have a bill that you have to pay that's reported to the credit bureaus, now Buy Now, Pay Later is part of that.
Warren stresses be financially responsible always with every credit account you have.
Manage your credit responsibly. Buy Now, Pay Later was just another form of credit.
And remember, Buy Now, Pay Later is a short-term loan. You don't want to loan stack. Take on too many loans from different retailers all at one time. It could put your credit score at risk and stretch your budget too thin. You must make sure to buy now, pay later, and on time.
And just like any type of credit or credit card that you have, any loan that you take out, manage it correctly.
Now, there are some other pitfalls to consider and just be mindful of if you're thinking of a buy now, pay later plan. Just make sure to also read that plan before you click the button. Some of those conditions might apply. This is thanks to Dawn for putting these together for the benefit of folks tuning in tonight. Be mindful of the interest fees on short-term loans because each one could be different depending on the lender. Remember, it is a loan. It may be a no-interest loan or it might be a loan with high interest. They're not all the same. So know the loan type. Make sure to check on those late fees too. They can also be pretty hefty on top of them, then alerting your credit report and that impacting your specific rating. And you could, of course, read much more extensively on the things you should know before you take on this kind of contract. It's part of on Dawn's story on wave3.com. All right, as we approach 8:39, one more pause before we get into our last round of stories for the day here at the desk. Checking in on the big headlines for you on our website, wave3.com. So as we reset, we're going to be right back with more of those stories on Wave Extra. Welcome back, 8:41 on tonight's edition of Wave Extra here in the Wave Now studio as we unwind and go through all the big stories we're trying to unpack for the day and preparing for any potential more updates and in-depth looks tonight on Wave News at 11. One check-in on a city program that wants to transform ordinary outdoor spaces into places where people can go hang out at their leisure. One of those being as far as a program within city stops. They want to build that network of spaces where people can meet, eat, play, and relax. So now with this newest installation, folks can go hang out on some giant swings. This is located at the PNC Tower at 5th and Main Streets in the heart of downtown. The place also has 2 bike rack sculptures. The point of the project, as leaders say, is to reimagine how anyone who wants to enjoy the public space can use it to connect and also to highlight downtown.
Whether it is enjoying a beautiful day like today, whether it's just having a seat and watching people walk down Main Street, our busiest thoroughfare of tourists, whether it's catching up on email or grabbing a coffee or tea and having a meeting with a coworker. We want to foster an environment where you get to enjoy your surroundings and each other.
So the new expansion, or at least this installation, expands downtown City Spot network. Other sites, in case you were curious, include the J.P. Morgan Chase City Spot, the Metro Hall City Spot. There's also the Bark Park on 4th Street as the network expands there. Moving over to concerns some business owners have had over the past, this, let's say now looking mostly almost 9 months into the year, especially leading up toward the summer for folks in the Highlands. They say they are pleased with LMPD's efforts to try to cut down on a lot of the different high volume crime and busy noise and traffic and congestion that can plague the area, especially over the weekends sometimes. Wave News reporter Kirsten Foote spent some of her time today digging into this story and finds that the tide may be turning to the benefit of not just the businesses, but the neighbors and people who enjoy coming to the Highlands.
As summer starts to wind down, it's hard to believe that it was only a few months ago that a feeling of concern was looming around Bardstown Road after large pop-up parties had business owners on edge. Now things are starting to turn. In the wake of those tense early summer weeks, Councilman Reno Weber told local business owners at the Highlands Commerce Guild that the police presence in the area would look differently throughout the summer, and those promises seem to have paid off.
I want to give a huge shout out to LMPD for their increased activity. We really asked for you guys to be out walking more. And that has absolutely happened.
Councilman Reno Weber says that over the last 2 years, violent crime is down 60% in the Highlands. But now the work is focusing on proving that to the public.
If you'd told me that 2 years ago, I'd have been like, half that would be amazing. That's what we're seeing. Now, the perception is definitely lagging the reality in that. And so part of what we need to be doing is talking about that story.
One of those issues from earlier this summer were loiterers who used business parking lots to create those pop-up parties. At the time, LMPD urged business owners to apply for a trespassing waiver, which allows officers to enforce the law when the owner is not there. Officer John Keeling with LMPD's 5th Division says that over the summer, more businesses applied for that waiver.
It's been a big difference in the nuisance problem.
Christy Dodds is the owner of a Highlands business further up on Bardstown Road who has that waiver for her business. Well, she says that her business was not affected by the rowdy crowds. What happens on one end of Bardstown Road affects everyone else.
I'm excited to see that crime is down, patrol is up. Everybody wants the same thing. They want a happy, peaceful place to live and play, and I think all of the business owners are appreciative.
Another hot topic discussed at Wednesday's meeting was Metro Codes and Regulations' efforts to crack down on vacant and abandoned buildings like this one. Their director says they're working to change the ordinance to make it easier to go after those property owners. You can learn more by clicking on this story on our website. Reporting in the Highlands, Kirsten Foote, Wave News.
And in a story of trying to revitalize businesses in another part of the city for Louisville for decades, neighbors, investors, store owners in the Russell and Portland area, they say they've had to overcome a lot of obstacles, not only just for their day-to-day life, but just to stay as healthy as they can. Something seemingly as simple as going to get medicine, it could turn out to be hard when pharmacies are not easily accessible within walking distance or even a short drive. And there's also, on top of that, a lack of transportation because apparently for Russell and Portland neighbors, they treat this, and the neighborhood is known as what's called a pharmacy desert. But today, Wave News reporter Marissa Burke is telling us how the opening of a new business is trying to change all that for the better.
The founders of Good Brothers Pharmacy say that it's more than just a business. It's a promise of convenience and connections for people living in West Louisville.
3, 2, 1. It's a moment that has been more than 5 years in the making.
Families here deserve more than having to travel miles just to get their prescription medication.
It's a step towards addressing the real needs of the West Louisville community.
Hours have been restricted, services have been restricted. There's a lack of, access to pharmaceuticals, products being shipped in and taking days to come in.
Good Brothers Pharmacy is opening its doors. They're located in the Russell neighborhood at 2306 West Market Street. The area has been known as a pharmacy desert. For Dr. Michaela Brooks, that means she will be many people's first point of contact dealing with health concerns.
Some people are not comfortable with going to the hospitals or making doctor's appointments, so they come here in their most vulnerable states looking for medical advice. So I have to set that standard to make sure that if they're comfortable with me, they'll be comfortable to go and seek medical attention that they need.
Aside from addressing a community need, Good Brothers is also making history as Louisville's first Black-owned pharmacy.
Today we open our doors not just as a pharmacy, but as a family. Today we follow the footsteps of Dr. Zuri, who opened the first Black-owned pharmacy in Lexington, Kentucky.
The founders of Good Brothers are from West Louisville and wanted to come back home to make a business that would help the community. A change they hope transcends generations and goes beyond the pharmacy.
I just want the other kids from around Louisville, Kentucky, just to know, sports isn't the only way out, right? You could be an entrepreneur and open up anything. The people who own the hospitals, they're not doctors, right? I'm not a pharmacist, and I opened up a pharmacy. And so you can do anything that your mind allows you to do.
So I looked it up on my map, and this pharmacy is the closest pharmacy for many people living in this area. Many times they would have to walk an hour or even take the bus to get the medicines that they need, but this pharmacy changes that. The founders of Good Brothers say that they know that one pharmacy doesn't address the entire need, but it's a start. Marissa Burke, Wave News.
A reminder tonight, a great resource, not just to read Marissa's story, Kirsten's story, but to check in on all the big headlines and updates is all there updated as soon as possible on our main homepage of wave3.com. You can see stories like, of course, U of L now trying to restore the 2013 basketball title, the full OIG report to help LMPD detectives improve their caseloads and long-term solutions to create a better situation for the department. Of course, discussing the big project to shut down I-65 coming up, just the awful tragedy, the top headlines of the deadly shooting up in Minneapolis at that Catholic church and school. But again, the breadth of all the different stories there for you to check in at your convenience, as those stories are all updated in real time on wave3.com. Download for push alerts on the Wave News app, on the Wave Weather app from the storm tracking team whenever there is weather to discuss. On a night like tonight, I will say, as we'll switch out to check in on our SkyTrack view of quiet Bardstown right now. Sun is set, but looking pretty quiet, enjoying the temperatures in the mid-70s. We're going to be discussing perhaps the feeling of pre-fall, how long that's going to last for us, when fall in earnest is most likely going to come back pretty soon. But the storm tracking team will certainly be on top of that tonight, so make sure you join us for Wave News at 11, and the reporting team recapping the big stories of the day here locally and addressing and looking at the big stories across the entire nation. We always appreciate your time joining us here in the Wave Now studio, whether that's through your Wave Now app on your smart TV or connecting with us on our multiple social media streams. I'm Jose Sosaya for tonight's Wave Extra. We'll see you tomorrow back at 8. Wave News starts at 11 tonight. We'll see you then. Take care.